Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August Grafana Agent Community Call. Um, Happy to have everybody here. And as always, if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever it may be, feel free to join us next time. The community Slack channel is where you can find us. And there's a lot of detail in the pin topic on the Agents Community Call tool link. So we will go ahead and get started. And Pierre is going to kind of preview the Prompto config conversions, and I'll hand it off to him.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Matt, for the intro. So I'm Piotr, an engineer on Grafana agent team, and today I'll give you a preview of Promptail config conversions to agent flow. So what are configuration converters? Basically, it's a tool that you can use when you would like to migrate to Grafana agent flow. You may be able to convert your existing configuration automatically to the agent flow format. We already have support for converting existing Prometheus configuration from 0.35, and more support formats are coming up. Today, I'm going to talk about the Promptail config support planned for 0.36. And there's also work ongoing for Grafana agent static mode support. So how do you use config converters? This is a recap from, I guess, the previous community call where Eric introduced this as well. You can run the convert command to convert an input config file into agent flow just using the convert subcommand. You can see any diagnostics and warnings by adding extra flag for the report. And it is also possible to convert the configuration file on the fly and run the agent using it straight away by adding a config format flag to agent's run command. So this is an example of how it looks for the Promptail config converter. On the left, we have the Promptail YAML. It's a simple example that kind of looks at the paths matching the glob and then sends them to the localhost Loki instance. And after running the command in orange above, you can convert that Promptail YAML into the new config format for agent flow, which is displayed on the right side, the flow.river, where we have three components. The first component is local file match, which will glob the file system, find all the paths that match the specified path in varlog star.log. And then those targets are consumed by Loki source file, which will tail each of those files and send the logs to the next component, Loki write, which will send those components over network to Loki instance running on the local host. So this was a very short demo. I hope that you will be able to give it a go and you will find the Promptail converters useful. And now, yeah, if you have any questions, we would be more than happy to answer them. Go ahead, Matt.
What's our target compatibility and kind of end goal date for everything ready?
Sorry, target compatibility. You mean like the version of Promptail that we support?
And are we supporting every feature in Prompto? Like what are we doing?
Yes. So we support everything that is supported in River should also be convertible from Promptail in general. There are potentially some exceptions, and there may be some exceptions in the future for which we will generate diagnostics. And if those issues are like potentially breaking, those will be generated as errors and will be visible when you run the convert command, and then you can address them. And usually you should find a way to address the issue manually. Yeah, we aim for feature parity. There should be it should be possible to convert every Promptail configuration into flow mode. And also the docs specify what version of Promptail we support. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, do we have guidance and documentation on how to use this feature in the agent docs as part of the release?
Yes, there will be documentation, and this will be in the form of getting started guide. So just you may be able to see already now there's a getting started slash migrating from Prometheus. There will be a new page for migration from Promptail with an example similar to the one I showed, but also with a little bit more detail, especially including those diagnostics.
Yeah, and for the migration options, it looks like there's a couple, right? To get a new configuration file, as well as the option to just run the original configuration in flow mode. Is there one that you have a personal preference to, or do you think there's any pitfalls between the two?
Yeah, I think that that for production environment or more complex configs, I would prefer to convert a file, inspect it, make sure I understand it, and then run this. You can, yeah, this may be more maintainable, and you may be able to also add new features in River in case you find them, or simplify your config, or you can even add comments to kind of make it easier to work with. And you can make it your own. Converting from the source is probably something I would use when working with simpler files and in local environment and just trying to get something quickly working.
Yeah,
That's my
sense.
personal
Yeah,
preference, though. Yeah.
I think I totally agree, and I like you pointed out. I really like that you can take the new configuration file and use other flow features. Once you've converted it. Whereas if you're running it inline, you're just stuck with what's compatible in the original Promptail, and you're limited to just that. So yeah, great,
Yep.
thank you.
No worries. Are there any more questions? Okay, in this case, thank you. If you have any more questions, you can join us on communitygrafana.com or join our public Slack channel, #agent. Thank you very much, and handing it back to Matt.
All right, awesome. Does anyone? I'll kind of open the floor here for if anyone has any questions or things they'd like to talk about. If not, we've got some potential ideas labeled for this, but I'll give time for just a moment here if anybody wants to ask questions, jump in with ideas. Kind of an open floor here. All right. So we have someone, I don't know who, added two potential ideas. Reverse tunnel capabilities, which I think this is, kind of like an SSH tunnel type thing, allows us to reach back in. I think maybe Robert, you've done some work here, or at least explored this in the past. Oh, you may not be around because you have the exterminators. Okay. Yeah. So what does everybody think of this? I assume I'm making an assumption here that this is pulling in, basically allowing the agent to act as a gateway to other systems. Obviously, we have some, there's always security and auth concerns about this. But does anybody have any thoughts on it? Yeah, Eric, I would share my screen, but it's just reverse terminal capabilities is the only note there.
Oh, I thought we were looking at issues. I'm sorry. I see it's in the
Yeah.
college Slack. Got it.
I would call them. I think it's something we would we would, if we did it, would be very careful in doing it, just simply because the install base of the agent's pretty wide, and that's a lot of possible concerns that we're making sure that's kind of airtight on being able to write and read arbitrary data to and from other systems. So it has to be done with a lot of care. But it is something we internally have looked at before. The next item is open telemetry events. I don't actually have an idea of what this necessarily is. Does anyone happen to know? Have I Googled this? According to random Googling, an event is like a log, but has a domain and a name. So I guess this is a subdivision of a log type. I honestly don't know much about this. But given that we are now listed as a hotel distribution, it's probably something we'd look at if we're not supporting it inherently with the importation of our current hotel collector components. And I'll add some flavor here in the agenda about what we discussed a little bit. All right. Anyone have any comments?
Oh, where did the reverse tunnel stuff and open telemetry events come from?
The agenda.
Who added that?
I have no idea. I don't know if it records it.
It does.
I don't think it matters, but
An anonymous user.
cool. Anonymous user. That's our comments. All right. Does anyone else have anything they would like to discuss?
Well, there's more in a history in the history for the reverse remote debugging.
Okay.
I'm aware of how Prometheus. I'm reading this out. I'm aware of how Prometheus metrics for single flow components. However, getting the health status of failed components requires shell access to those machines or open port 12345 from the network. Collecting the agent logs from all machines could result in a new requirement for a centralized logging system. The idea to abuse Prometheus labels for transport the component health was declined in the Slack thread. Oh, so ideas to solve that problem were either reverse tunnel or open telemetry events. Funny this was written because we actually Grafana Labs had a hackathon like last week, and we built something to solve this problem, which may or may not get added to the agent at some point as an open source feature. So sneak up, stay tuned, I guess.
All right. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to chat about? We can always take a look at open proposals. I'll share my screen here in a second. Hopefully everyone can see my screen here.
Yep.
I
Could you
don't
zoom in
remember
a bit, please?
Oh, yes. Embiggened. I don't actually ever remember if we go first or oldest or newest. But newest sounds more fun. Because I think a lot of these we've already hit. We have a module template component by Craig. Craig, you want to give us some background here since you're here?
I was not planning on discussing this in this meeting, but we sure can. This came out of kind of my own personal brainstorming about how to solve a number of use cases people have come to us about. The most common one would be I'm discovering a bunch of Redis pods with discovery.kubernetes, and I want to generate a component for each of them, a prometheus.export.redis component for each of them. And we don't have a way to do that right now. In Terraform, you could do something like a for each argument, which is something we've had proposed, but is also a really complicated proposal. So this is I definitely feel like it's a hack. If you scroll down, there's an example where you provide a Go template that then gets evaluated with arbitrary data. So in this case, you could feed in the labels from Discovery, and this template would generate components as well as the usage of it. It's a really powerful way to do some really weird things, but it also feels out of touch with kind of a lot of the philosophy of how we try to structure things with Flow. So I both really want it and also am very scared of it. Pascalis, did you have a question or?
No, I raised my hand by mistake. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Matt, go ahead.
Actually like this idea. I think we might have to separate. I think you're gonna have two sets of arguments here. So I think they're like the arguments to the template and then the arguments to the module.
Yeah,
but
context is the argument. We can discuss
okay, yeah.
values.
I think it's reasonable.
The intention here is to replace like cases where if someone comes and wants to do something and our workaround is like, oh, you can load a remote module but have an HTTP server that smart loads it, or you do external templating on your Flow config before you launch the agent. Like this can probably cover a lot of use cases that you're doing external hacks for. And so, but I absolutely do not want this to be like a reason not to implement a feature like a native for each if we get to it, because it's definitely a smell if you're using this.
I think this is a relatively cheap way to make impossible things hard, which is why I'm pro it. Like it's not as clean as maybe we could make it with more language level features, but it feels like it's a relatively cheap component to make.
It's literally like 5 lines on top of module.string.
Yeah, because you're essentially just going to call the text template parse and then rock it. So I feel this is probably good. What do others say? Can't be just me and Craig show thinking about this.
If it is something we want to move forward with, like you just said, Craig, is it something that should be an option on module string? Or you think it should be separate?
I was thinking about that as well. Like it could just be a standalone string transformer thing. I don't know if we have, or maybe a built-in function like JSON to code. Because I did, like my example uses it in conjunction with local.file, and I was wondering like, oh, should I just have the option to load a file in the template? There's nothing that says this needs to be a module loader. Yeah.
Yep. In my mind, yeah, it probably works better as just a standalone transformer you pass to a module. And then if we want to make it all in one, we can just combine those two components like we do with the other module loaders.
So a function like JSON decode.
I don't know about a function, but
Do we have any analogous components?
I don't know if we have something that's like a transform like this. Maybe somewhere in the hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, functions are just a little higher cost-wise, and like, I don't know. There's a lot of arguments you have to pass in here that maybe make it.
So I think like it's easier to implement because you don't have to deal with the update and run life cycle, but maybe that's a better discussion to have in the issue there, so we can think about it a little longer.
Does anybody have any giant problems with this?
I've listed a few in a few comments that still need to be resolved.
Okay.
But basically, this kind of harkens back to the your functionality, Matt, whose name I can't remember.
Dynamic configuration.
Dynamic configuration. And it would be pretty hard to implement because now with templates, we actually don't know what a component depends on until the template is evaluated, which requires having the correct dependencies wired. So like there's a bit of a cyclic dependency here, which means quite a bit would have to change to make this work properly.
Is it how is it that different than if you were loading something with module.http? Like that you can't validate that in advance and it could change at any time.
Well, because that's a module that has its own graph that gets wired up when it is resolved.
This is
and then components are evaluated.
Yeah, this is a module also.
No, but like if you scroll down, here we're saying the full content of the module depends on other things in that module, which means we have to like do essentially like modify the graph after the fact.
It's fundamentally the same though as like loading a file on disk that can change at any time. Yeah, it's dependent on other stuff in the graph, but
oh, so okay. So tell me, what components does Prometheus Grape.redis pods depend on before actually evaluating the component?
Yeah, so it would be an empty template. Like it would be an empty module to start with. Potentially. Okay.
No, like what is the list of components? The answer is Prometheus Exporter Redis, but we don't actually know that until we've resolved the template, which happens later.
Yeah, I'm not following either there, like Robert. And I guess in my mind, like if we're looking here, this is template text up here, and then this is essentially the arguments you're passing to that template to generate text, and then finally you're passing in the arguments.
Maybe I misunderstood. Can you scroll down? All right, maybe I misunderstood. I guess this would still work as long as the template gets evaluated first and the template can't ever use anything from the same module.
Yes, because I think it follows the normal paradigms of the module.
Okay, so I was wrong about that particular thing, but this still does give me the same concerns that I had about dynamic configuration, which is like adding different syntax on top of River makes it harder to use tools.
Absolutely.
So that I'll take away that first concern, but that concern still stands.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, like I get that it's scary, but we also have this kind of like with loading remote modules, like you can't validate it until you load it. And just because there's a templating step in the middle doesn't really.
I would love to see more options added to this proposal that includes language level functionality.
Okay.
All right. So do we have a state that's like? I guess we don't have a state that's like still in discussion, or we've looked at it. Yeah, we just have accepted and rejected. So this is still floating, it sounds like. Okay. Piotr, this looks like yours.
Yeah, this is recent. There, yeah, basically there's an example PR there that shows what I would like to generate automatically. But the main idea is that on a conceptual level, it would be nice for our docs to help users understand what components can connect to what other components. And by conceptual level, I mean from the point of view of telemetry pipeline and data flow. So, where you can find targets and what can consume those targets. And then there are usually some scrape components that can scrape metrics or logs. And then where can you send those logs and metrics further down in the pipeline? And yeah, this discusses a potential way of using reflection to generate docs, and I think the docs side of things is less controversial. I think that can work well, but there have been some comments about how we can generate it in a most agnostic way, I would say, like less most automatic way, and I think there's some good suggestions from Robert. I think more comments will be welcome, but potentially it's in a state where we could try an implementation or prioritize when do we want to do this.
Well, for myself, I like this idea. I like this, especially the conceptual outcome of having the reference docs have what it can connect to or not connect, or what it can feed into and what it can consume. I think that is nice and good. And it's more of just chatting about the implementation. Other thoughts, concerns? Go, Paul.
Hello. So I feel like this does make it easier for people to see which components connect to which. But in the example, in the proposal, I don't think it makes it very clear exactly why they're connected. So I don't think it says, for example, you can connect this attribute with this other attribute or something like that. And so I think, although it makes it easier, I'm not sure if people would still struggle to see exactly what they connect to what.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Pauline?
Yeah.
So when you say like why they can be connected, so here there is I try to like specify the type that connects them, and I thought that this would be sufficient, explanation. So there says, for instance, components that output Locky logs. So this can feed into that example component we're talking about because they produce Locky logs. I'm not 100% sure what other information would we need to include here to kind of address your concern.
Yeah, but what is Locky logs? Is that a type in River? Like if I go to Locky._process, will there be a type called Locky logs?
Okay, yeah, that's I see now where the confusion comes from, and that's from the prototype implementation because I kind of came up with the name Locky logs. It's in it's in a constant. It's hard coded, and it's mapping to the actual River what's this called, the logs receiver. Yeah, I agree that having those types defined would be also very helpful, and the kind of the Locky logs here looks like it was handwritten by a human. So yeah, I see where the confusion comes from.
Yeah, so although I'm not questioning that this is useful, I was personally imagining a slightly different thing. I thought it would be nice if in the documentation for a component, when there is a type, so let's say a string or a locky logs receiver, whatever, this type is also a link. And when you click a link, it can take you to some kind of index page, which can tell you which components are exporting an attribute with that type. So then you can essentially achieve the same thing. You can just go to that index and you can just see, oh, this can also come from these components, and you just choose one of them.
Yeah, that sounds like a good alternative. Would be, yeah, if you'd like to put a comment with that, maybe we could consider the user experience of both options.
Yeah, I already have.
Sorry.
Do we know how we'll handle very generic things like map list, list string, map list, map string, list string that probably don't necessarily connect easily or logically don't? Robert, are you wanting a new comment or a comment on mine? Comment.
Both.
Okay. Shoot.
Yeah, I just comment on your thing. I think like it's a good point. But I also think the full graph of how you can connect components would be so overwhelming, because like pretty much every component can use local files, right? So I think it's good if we just start with kind of the capsules here, where it's like, what can use the logs receiver, what can use the metrics receiver, and so on. And then if it makes more sense to expand that out to like all the types, then I think we can come back to that later.
Yeah, I agree. Keying off capsules feels like a good programmatic way to figure things out.
Yeah,
So
I think that's so. Yeah, we can still like discuss more details of like how it can be implemented and how the logs, how the docs would be presented to the users. And I think that it's kind of relevant to this proposal. Generally, we wouldn't really want to go into too much detail for implementation, but I think it's part of, especially this UX part is important here, right? Because the goal is to make it easier for customers and users. So yeah, I think I'll kind of try to collect those thoughts and continue the discussion on this doc, on this proposal.
do we want to say that the proposal's accepted and we can hash out the actual implementation? Because at least to me, it sounds like no one's saying no. We all want something similar or like this.
Yeah, that's my impression too. Like we have a high level, kind of the use case here. We do want to. I think it's useful to continue discussion on this proposal about the implementation.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Interoperability between local.file_match and discovery.file. Yeah, I think these are very different, and there's a lot of confusion around them because we did change some names around here. And Robert, it looks like you have a proposal for something similar.
What proposal is that?
It is 4610.
Oh, no, sorry, the other one. That's the infamous
2783.
Yeah, that's the infamous MapReduce filter proposal.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. So do we have any more comments? Nope. Is this something that we want to not accept and basically say the infamous MapReduce proposal will cover it?
Is that proposal accepted? No. I think
No.
we can't do anything with this one until we know if which one of these two get accepted.
Okay, why don't we just talk about this one then? It's infamous. It's been here for a long time. Let's make movement.
Yeah, why not?
Robert, do you wanna give the down low here?
Yeah, I mean the down low is there's a lot of components in Flow which expose objects or values that can be mutated upon. But the only way to actually do mutations with them today is to rely on existing components. So, for example, you might have a component that exports targets, but the only way to change that set of targets would be to do a discovery.relabel component. This proposal allows a more language level functionality to mutate values from components with using the functional programming paradigm, MapReduce filter stuff, and would allow a lot of things you would previously do with relabeling rules, or sorry, discovery relabel rules to now be done with expressions. So at the very top there, Matt, if you scroll up a little bit, this is a rule I have written that I use in my personal configs, where the regular expression for it is a huge monster. It's just like gross, it's disgusting. What it's trying to do, though, is identify the first label from that source label set, which is defined on the target, and then set that to the label called service. But to do that, as you can see, you need this really nasty, gross regex. With the map filter reduce proposal, if you scroll down now, we could instead represent that expression or that rule as this expression, where we map over the targets, and for each target, we add a service label which is coalesced from that set of labels. Thanks to Matt for the coalesce function, which is coalesced from that set of input labels, and it stops on with the first one that's defined. This is probably a lot more familiar to developers and less familiar to like non-programming esque users. But one thing it does enable is newer transformations on targets. You can even combine, you can even like merge labels together from two different target sets if you wanted to. Like you can take like EC2 labels and merge those with like node labels from Kubernetes for like extra metadata. And encapsulate that as something that the non-programming user might want to use without us having to write new components. So that's kind of the driving factor behind this specific proposal, which is how can we enable transforming and combining values in River a little more powerfully without having to write new components in a way that is both powerful for developers and still accessible for newer non-developers via modules.
I'll call upon myself. I am very pro the concept here. Obviously, maybe some comments about the implementation when we get into it, but this feels like table stakes for having an expressive language. Everybody's
I
real
agree with
quiet.
the sentiment, yeah.
So if no one has a problem with it, accept it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Boom. Now let's go back a step. So this one we think we can close with the 2783 being accepted.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, auto comment. Should have muted so you don't hear the click clack. All right. Is this really a proposal or just give some more details? Is this a bug or like a feature request more than a proposal?
I think we need Pablo, who kind of
Okay.
does this one to comment.
Okay, we'll skip it. All of them are now scraping everything. This looks like you opened an issue, and this is with opening the issue. Essentially, does that mean that issue will supersede this, Pascalis?
I think it's only for clustering though, but
Okay.
I don't know if we have thought of any workarounds for non-clustering mode. The same is true for other integrations, and possibly the thing to do now is maybe tell people to not run these integrations in as daemon sets unless they know what they're getting into, and possibly splitting into a different deployment. Ideally, yeah, I'd like to work on the fine-grained scheduling idea as soon as possible to not fall into the same trap that we had for static mode, where each use case would require a specific deployment method.
Okay.
I think this can be an enhancement and not a proposal, and we can work on the idea of what to do in the meantime.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Oh, dang. That's not how you change the level. Okay. Let's do one more. That way we can give some time for the next meeting. So this seems, is this a documentation issue? It looks like.
I think so, yeah, or related to what we discussed before, allowing people to more easily discover what components to use.
I regret adding the proposed label to stuff like this, where it's just kind of like an enhancement request.
Yeah, I think are you all right if I change it to an enhancement?
Yeah.
All right, I lied. We'll do one more since that one was. Oh, this is like a legit proposal. Craig, looks like adding some scanning SLA and procedures. Craig here.
No,
Nope.
he's not.
Okay. This is adding more tooling and actually putting expectations around it. Anybody had any comments here? Just a lot of. I am personally pro this. You know, we should have more documentation on how we handle security and what tools we're using and what they show up as. Obviously, we try to solve CVEs, but there could be some other things around there that maybe are not covered. Anyone else have any other comments on this one?
I think the idea is solid. We just have to find a good way to communicate all of this, and maybe also allow other people to report issues to us in a secure way.
Mm-hmm. Cool. make it accepted. Unless anybody pushes back. All right, I'll cut it off there. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Does anybody have any last final words? Cool. If not, I'll post this up probably in the next day or two. And appreciate everybody showing up. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye, team.